All right. Happy Tesla earnings day, everybody. We're back again with FSD Beta 12, and I'm headed to go pick up some food from Chipotle. So we're going to go there and we can talk a little bit about the earnings. So, listening to people, some people sound like they want to cry. This is a total disaster. Growth is over. Except, I mean, for a bad situation, I think things are looking pretty incredible. Model Y is the best-selling car in the world, despite being a much higher price than the other highest volume models, which is really an anomaly. How do you explain that anomaly? I explain it by saying people are crazy about EVs, and they're crazy about autopilot and FSD. And I think that's really what's driven it to be the number one best-selling car in the world despite the much higher price. Now we hear that next year, 6 years or 7 years after the introduction of the Model 3, Tesla's going to be introducing a model that's half the cost of the 3 and Y. And they're going to be doing it based on this next-gen platform. Elon was really hyping it up a bit on the earnings call today. He's saying it's going to be a revolution in vehicle manufacturing. It's a little bit too early to say if that's going to be true or not, but given what Tesla's done with the large structural castings for the underbody and how that's been adopted by Volvo, Toyota, Chinese EV makers, I think that really is something that has proven to revolutionize the industry, in fact. So when you have a company like Tesla that has delivered a significant new technology in vehicle manufacturing that others have adopted, and they say they've got another production innovation that's going to take it to the next level, I think you have to give that some level of credibility. And I'm sure there will be some hiccups, but I think it's probably going to be a substantial improvement over the 3 and Y. If they don't get to half the cost, I think they'll really, make a big dent in it. So $36,000 is the COGS of a Tesla today on average. If they could get that to around, let's say $18,000, sell the car starting around $25,000, that would be huge. And this, of course, isn't just one car. It's a platform where you're going to have multiple vehicles made on the same line. So one of them, Reuters reported yesterday, is going to be a compact crossover. Think the Model Y, but smaller. And a lot of people say, well, isn't this going to cannibalize the 3 and Y? But I think with the smaller vehicle, people do like to have a bigger vehicle. They would even really like a bigger vehicle than the 3 and Y. They'd really like a Cybertruck-sized vehicle, many people. But, 3 and Y is kind of an okay size for most people because it's electric. It really has a lot more space than you'd think, given the size of the vehicle, and has a ton of storage room. So I think a 3 and a Y are a good size for most people. I don't think a lot of people, especially in the North American market, are necessarily going to want a smaller size car than that. In the European and Asian markets, it may actually be preferable to some people because of the nature of some of those cities there. But, generally I think it's coming in at a lower tier. It's physically smaller. The 3 and Y are better. The Cybertruck is better. The S and X are better. For customers that can afford it, they probably are going to go with higher tier product. Consumers in general, they kind of tend to pick, the middle tier. So I think the 3 and Y will continue to be successful. Growth will probably be lower than what we've seen. We're not going to see them grow, 80% year over year, 90% year over year, most likely, the same way we did when these products were new. But, I think maybe 10, 20, 30% growth is achievable even after the next-gen vehicle hits the market. And I think it'll actually expand the market, the next-gen platform, and drive sales of the 3 and Y. With a new entry-level product at the $25,000 price point, which if it qualified for the EV point of sale credit, would be 17,500. I mean, we're talking a sub $20,000 EV that could get good range, probably around 300 miles, that could run this FSD software. I mean, this would be an incredibly disruptive product. So they wouldn't be able to make enough of them, really. It'd just be a question of how many they could make. And I think it would drive interest in the 3-in-Y as well. You'd probably take the 3-in-Y, probably raise the price a few $1,000s of those products going into 2026, and focus them up market as they're continuing to do with the upgraded Model 3 and Y. Continue to add new features. You know, they just added a rear screen. They added ventilated seats. So they're sort of premium, adding more premiumness to the 3-in-Y, really looking at all the little details to really make it a high quality product. And then I think the new vehicles will serve as an entry point, and you can sort of refocus the 3-in-Y. You can actually raise the price a few $1,000s and improve the gross margin on the hardware there, because you have this new product sort of serving that entry level price point where people can get into the brand. And then, you know, I think there's going to be 2 or more vehicles that are built on the next gen platform. So one will be a typical compact crossover, great for Europe, great for China. But the other one is going to be a low-cost robotaxi vehicle. And, you know, a lot of people sort of get upset about this. They go, why are you going to make a vehicle without controls? That's ridiculous. Well, other people are already doing it, actually. And we're talking about a vehicle where Elon's saying end of 2025, start of production for the next-gen platform. Realistically, let's put that into 2026, late 2025, 2026. So, you know, 2026, 2 years from now, it's January 2024 now. And look at this, V12 just drove us all the way here like it was nothing. I wasn't even paying attention to it. I was talking to you guys, and it's already this good. Where do you think it's going to be in 2 years? It's not foolish to start preparing to make a vehicle with no controls. It would be foolish not to do it, given the way the software is advancing. That's, I think, a really important point to understand. You know, the company strategy doesn't really make sense if you don't think autonomy is going to happen. So I think that's a big gap in the perception of really the investor community and what management is seeing. All right, we're pulling into the parking lot here. And we made it. So yeah, I think the robotaxi vehicle built on the next-gen platform, it's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean they're going to stop making vehicles with controls. All their vehicles have controls. There will be a $25,000 compact crossover with controls, I believe. Where is it going? But I think it also makes sense to have a vehicle without controls. With steer-by-wire, it's what is it doing? This is really interesting. Okay. Huh. It ended up in a parking spot. Oh my god. That's kind of interesting. Wow. I've never seen that before. Anyway, I was saying, really, with the next-gen vehicle and the version without controls, it doesn't mean there's not going to be a version with controls. But when you look at 2026, we do have to start preparing for that now. And a vehicle that someone might drive, sure, put controls on it. But one that's going to go out as a dedicated robotaxi, it actually is better without controls. Because if you look at the Waymo, they have a sticker that says, don't touch the wheel, the car will stop. If you actually pull the wheel of a Waymo, it'll actually move, which is just kind of dangerous. So it absolutely makes sense to be making that kind of vehicle. And if you cut half the cost out of the vehicle, you can essentially make 2 of these driverless robotaxis for the price of 1. So overall, I think if you're a shareholder, things may not be looking too bullish. If you're a fan of the EV revolution, if you're a fan of AI and autonomy, things are looking pretty exciting, honestly. So take care, everyone. All right, so we grabbed our food. Let's head back. I'll turn it on right from the parking spot. we'll see how it does. Okay, so we have some cones here. We've got a wall. It's a little unclear how to get out from this vantage point, but it looks like I figured it out. Very good. This is a one-way, so there's only cars coming from one direction. Looks like the coast is clear, but it's creeping very gently. A little overly cautious, but overly cautious is good for an early build. Now we're going to be approaching a roundabout here, a little bit of an odd roundabout. So at times FSD has often sort of struggled with this. It doesn't even really look like a roundabout. Actually, maybe they got rid of the roundabout. I don't know. Or I think that's the roundabout. That's the island. So I think that's kind of what's confusing, because it almost looks like an intersection, but theoretically it's a roundabout. So it handled that perfectly. All right, next we're going to be making a left turn onto Scott Street in 0.1 miles. We got a green light up ahead. All right, very good. Slowing down as it crested that hill, very human-like. I don't know if it was necessary to do it that much, but I like that it is varying its speed for hills. It's just creating a much more comfortable driving experience. That's really going to make the difference between people staying subscribed and people canceling, how they feel when they use it. FSD 1 through 11 demonstrated that self-driving with vision was technically possible, but they did not demonstrate really a level of comfort that can get it to mass consumer adoption. And this does. So you can kind of see it in the FSD growth numbers. So I've been looking at the miles they've been disclosing, and it is going up a lot. I think they reported around 750 million. That would probably put it on track to go to, over 1 billion by potentially the next earnings call. But, okay, there's a red light here. Kind of looked like it was going. It's a little bit confusing here with the red light and the green light, so maybe it thought the green light applied, but it did end up stopping, which is good. But yeah, like I was saying, I was looking at the miles, and you would expect that the rate of miles being added to increase as more users were added on. But instead it's only increasing linearly. So what that tells me is that you're not seeing a tremendous amount of new user growth. And why is that? I think pricing plays a part. I think they've adopted a restrictive pricing scheme. I think that if they made it more accessible, you could do that a few different ways. Lower the subscription price, lower the purchase price. That could be one factor in why it's not growing more, but I think really just the lack of comfort compared to V12 is also a big factor. I imagine there's a lot of people churning just because it's uncomfortable to use. So this could be a meaningful step forward in that direction. Actually having something that the average consumer is comfortable using, and they don't feel afraid, they feel relaxed. In years past, it's really been a story with Tesla where they've got this great EV business. It's growing like crazy. There's earnings growth. In the pandemic years, you had pricing going up, driving gross margins forward. And FSD was kind of a nice to have. Okay, we've already got this great auto business, and okay, we have some additional software revenue on top of that. That's even better. Today, with everything that's happening in the auto market, with rates being high, with the market being much tighter, there being a much higher level of inventory than we've seen in prior years. This has gone from really a nice to have to a must have for investors. I think the vehicle business is going to continue to grow, especially with the next gen platform. I think unit sales, earnings, revenue will grow quite a bit. But in this period, especially with them saying, look, we see ourselves as kind of in between two waves of growth, the 3Y platform and the next gen platform. Well, if we could have FSD and a high rate of subscriptions and purchases drive a wave of growth in 2024, that would change everything for the story, for investors, for the market. So that really needs to happen. If you're on the Tesla AI team, I mean, what you're doing is incredible. What I'm seeing here is hands down the best version of FSD I've tested, even though I can tell it's a little rough, it's a little new. There's a driverless car over there. I mean, this is possible. I ride in these driverless cars, everybody does, and they work. Even with a lot of challenges, they work. They can get this system to work too. I know it, with just computer vision, without a lot of mapping. It's really clear that it's possible. So if you're on the Tesla AI team, I mean, this is historic work, really. But the entire company is really depending on you. This is the year to, Elon talks about sleeping on the factory floor for the ramp of the next gen vehicle. I mean, these guys deserve a huge round of applause. They are working around the clock in 2024 to get this to a point where it is going to be an earnings driver for the company. And they don't really need to achieve autonomy. I mean, obviously achieving autonomy is great. I think they are going to get to driverless reliability a lot faster than people think. But all they really need to do is launch FSD in China, launch FSD in Europe, and get a meaningful percentage to subscribe. It doesn't have to be 90%. It doesn't have to be 100%. But it should be, if you could get to more than 50%, you would double the profitability of the company. Really nice natural handling of those pedestrians crossing. Assertive, still getting across, but also being really respectful of the pedestrians. Really natural. I really love that. In the past, it's been so frustrating using FSD beta in San Francisco because so many people are walking around, cycling around, and it would just stop and wait and be so awkward in how it handled it. Now all of a sudden, just with this early build of V12 that they don't even feel confident releasing to everybody, it's just a quantum leap forward. I mean, it's just making me so excited. It's funny the contrast between the narrative you hear in sort of the financial world that, oh, okay, this business is a disaster, the earnings are never going to grow again, etc., etc. And then you just sort of experience this. You experience a car that can move around the world just by looking at it with cameras. And I don't know, it's hard not to be bullish despite everything. So here we are at the destination. Once again, FSD 12 has taken us parking spot to parking spot with zero intervention. That's what it does most of the time, even with the super early build. Curb to curb, parking spot to parking spot, with no interventions. You don't have to do anything. This next gen vehicle they got, half the cost, and it's going to run this technology. People have no idea. They're so bearish on this company, and yet we're watching them deploy in the coming weeks. That's the other thing. They announced they're going to roll this out to everyone in the coming weeks who wants to download it. They're rolling out I don't know, one of the most transformational technologies of the decade, I think. So, I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited for all of you to try V12 too. I really think a lot of people are going to love it. So, take care, everyone.